All right. Open floor NBA podcast, second podcast of the week because we have free agency mayhem over the last couple of days. A flurry of free agent signings, the reshaping of several contenders in the NBA. So much to get to. I want to bring in an old friend of the podcast, the former co-host of this podcast, now a part of what I think is officially a league partner from NBC News now. One, Rohan Nadkarni. We're in a new league season, Rohan? Are you now part of the league apparatus at the moment?
I don't know about league apparatus. First of all, sorry, I assumed this was going to be a boxing podcast. I was grinding a lot of Devin Haney tape. I guess maybe there's a little miscommunication there, but yes, excited to be. Everyone, please go see Jurassic World Rebirth, another great movie from NBC Universal. So excited to have the league back on NBC. Certainly, Chris.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about a few of the teams that we'll see live on NBC next season. Round Ball Rock coming back next season. Very excited about that too. But before we do kind of our winners and losers list, because that's how we're going to kind of frame it on this show, let's just talk off the top about what happened on Tuesday in Milwaukee. The Milwaukee Bucks largely sat out the first 6-7 hours of free agency when there was a flurry of deals after the 6 p.m. kickoff in the NBA. On Tuesday, they got right back into the mix. The big news out of Milwaukee is that they are signing Miles Turner to a 4-year deal, about $107 million, I believe is the last reported number. To do that, they are waiving and stretching the largest salary in NBA history. They are waiving and stretching Damian Lillard's contract, which has 2 years and over $100 million left on that deal, which means for the next 4 years, the Bucks will have Damian Lillard's money north of $20 million on their cap, all to get one Miles Turner onto the roster. They also brought back Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, Bobby Portis is coming back as well. I've got my thoughts on this, Rowan, but why don't you start? How big a deal is this for Milwaukee? How big a needle mover is this for the Bucks?
Chris, I remember when they traded for Drew Holiday in 2020 and they sent out a bunch of first-round picks. And maybe some people were wondering, is this an overpay for Drew Holiday? Every move the Bucks make has to come in the context of, it's not just, is it worth it for X player? It's, does this move mean Giannis Antetokounmpo will want to stay in Milwaukee? And I think that's really my takeaway from this is, do I think it is crazy? Yes. You could have told me today that LeBron James was getting traded, that Giannis was getting traded, and I would have been less shocked. Then when I saw the first, I was like, Miles Turner, are they trading Kyle Kuzma? And then to see the wave and stretch, that was a real shocker, Do I think it's worth it for Miles Turner alone? No, I do not. We saw Turner struggle a lot in the last 2 rounds of the playoffs. I think he is the kind of center you want to replace Brook Lopez and play next to Giannis. Like, it's a good basketball fit. It's not necessarily an overpay. But if you look at it through the lens of, is this going to make Giannis stay? If this buys you another couple years to build around him, then I think you can start to make the argument that it's worth it. But they are going to be doing that they already have the handicap of basically not controlling any of their drafts for the foreseeable future. And then you add in a $22 million just dead money on the books for the next 4 or 5 years. It's bold. I respect it in terms of this is what they do when Giannis applies pressure. They make a swing for better or worse. I think I'm a soft positive on it because it seems like it's going to make Giannis stay, but it's bold, man.
Look, it's a positive because they didn't have any other option to dramatically improve the team. Damian Lillard is not playing basketball next season. You get hurt with that type of injury at that stage of the year, it's a year-long recovery. He wasn't coming back next year. So now you add Miles Turner to that mix. And I agree with you. He is a flawed player. He shot something like 30% from three in the conference finals. He was like 21% from three in the NBA finals. His overall shooting percentage in the finals was not good. But he is a 29-year-old proven center who can do a lot of the things that Brook Lopez could do and a lot of the things that Brook Lopez could not do at this point in his career. So it's an upgrade over what the team would have looked like if they had stood pat and done absolutely nothing. And this always has to be viewed through the prism of, can they keep Giannis in a Bucks uniform? Can they entice him to either stay quiet about his future with the team or, best case scenario, as he's done the last couple of times, sign a contract extension with the team? I mean, that is obviously the end game for John Horst and the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't look at this acquisition as leapfrogging the Bucks into the upper half of the Eastern Conference. They still need a point guard. Kevin Porter Jr., remarkable job reviving his career last year. Shot close to 40% in his time with Milwaukee. Fine as a rotation player. He is not a starting point guard on a playoff contending team or on a contending team. He's just not. And I don't know where they would find that guy. There are some players out there on the back end of the free agent scrap heap that they could probably pick up, and they could do maybe a small deal to get someone, not saying campaign, but a campaign type. Hell, maybe campaign. I don't know. But you can get someone like that. But that's not going to be the answer to the problem they have at that position. So I think it's an upgrade. I think it's a creative and smart move to make given the circumstances. And if it keeps Giannis happy, even temporarily, that's what they want. Like, they don't want to have to trade Giannis under any circumstances. They don't want to be pushed to that point where they've got to rebuild, because frankly, it's going to be hard for them to rebuild because they don't have control of their own draft picks over the next few years because of all the deals they've made, most notably with the Jrue Holiday deal and, Lillard deal as well. So I get it. I think it's a smart move given the circumstances. I don't think the contract is that outrageous. I mean, we've seen guys like
really fair deal. I mean, he got paid less than Naz Reid.
Yeah, Naz Reid, kind of set a bar there. A lot of guys. I mean, Luke Cornett. I don't know how to weave Luke Cornett into this conversation, but the fact that Luke Cornett got 4 years and $41 million is a remarkable something, an example of something in free agency. But that Miles Turner's deal is pretty good. And look, I think they could probably get off it if they wanted to, if this thing went bust in a year or so. It's not an untradeable type of deal, and Miles Turner proved he can be a contributor in the playoffs. I just don't know how much it upgrades them, overall as a team. I think that still remains to be seen with the Bucks.
Short term, they're still in a world of pain. As you mentioned, they don't have a point guard. I kind of like the Gary Harris pickup for them. I feel like I'm the last homeowner on Gary Harris Island. I believe he can help a good team.
Yeah.
I wonder how much right now they regret the Middleton Kuzma trade. Not only because it ended up not really helping them last year, and Middleton's not the player he was, but at least in terms of shopping a guy, you would have had a Middleton expiring this year. You would have had a player option, maybe bring him back on less money if he wants to stay. It's just those kinds of moves that they've made. And again, on one hand, I commend them for being willing to push their chips in to do whatever it takes around Giannis, but they got to calibrate it a little bit. But I agree. Short term, this is not. I don't think they're better than Cleveland. I don't think they're going to be better than Detroit, New York. I'm sure I'm forgetting some teams, Atlanta, who I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Orlando
for sure. So it's, to me, not a short-term move, but if it buys you time with Giannis, I wonder if Kuzma is the kind of guy that can maybe build up some value back by the trade deadline. I don't see him as a long-term fit here, but I agree. It's not. Their hands are tied. They have to do something to placate Giannis, and if this does it, it's worth it on that level.
Yeah, I mean, look, ever since they did the deal to acquire Jrue Holiday, they have been a team that's proven to be willing to roll the dice. They rolled the dice on Holiday. It worked out. They rolled the dice on Lillard. It didn't work out. They rolled the dice on Kyle Kuzma. So far, it hasn't worked out. But they're not afraid to take chances with this roster, in part because they know that the one thing that's guaranteed to cause Giannis Antetokounmpo to throw up his hand and say, I'm out of here, is inactivity. It's apathy. They have not been apathetic. They have not been inactive in that front office, and I think they deserve credit for that. We'll see how it all plays out. We've still got a couple of months left in this offseason. Maybe there's another card to be played if you're Milwaukee, but right now I think they got a little bit better because, Dame was gone. You weren't going to have him. And you have Miles Turner now. And I think Miles is probably better than Brook Lopez was for them last year. But is it good enough to leapfrog them into the top of the conference? Right now, I don't think so. We'll see what else happens there. All right, let's look at some winners and losers from the first couple of days of free agency. And I'll start here because the big winner for me is the Houston Rockets. The Rockets, they've been transparent over the last few months. I was down there in the early part of the year working on a story on Amen Thompson. And I talked to Rockets officials about kind of what they were looking for out of this season. And really the big thing was information. Like they were looking for data. They wanted to see what worked with this young group and what didn't. Who played well together and who didn't. What this team needed and what it didn't. They were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference last year, but that was kind of house money they were playing with at that time. It was like, wow, we went from a team that was in the play-in last year to a team, now the 2nd seed in the Western Conference, get beat in the first round, but whatever. It wasn't the year that they were hoping to contend for a championship. They weren't ready for that yet. What they've done with that information that they gathered over the last couple of months is made moves that have made them measurably better. I mean, they go out and they get Kevin Durant. That is exactly what they need. Kevin Durant, pushing 37 years old, is
at
still
a low price. At
a very low price. Just giving up the 10th overall pick in the draft, the Suns draft Malawach, who I don't see it. I don't see it with Malawach, but that Phoenix is a conversation for another day. They get Kevin Durant, who even pushing 37 is still an elite scorer in the NBA. And I'm of the belief that if they had Kevin Durant on that team instead of Jalen Green, they beat Golden State in the first round. Maybe they go even further. I think Kevin Durant is still that big a difference maker. They lose Dylan Brooks, but they replace him with Dorian Finney-Smith on a 4-year deal, about $53 million. We'll see how much of that is fully guaranteed. I'm not entirely sure. He's kind of, to me, a less versatile but less volatile version of Dylan Brooks, if we can call him that. Good player, still a good player. Used to be able to guard 1 through 4. Now he's kind of guarding 3s and 4s, I think, at this stage, but still a legit 3-and-D guy in this league. Good signing. They signed Clint Capella, I guess in case Steven Adams goes down again. They bring Fred VanVleet back on what was a team-friendly deal. They have hit right on everything, I think, with this team. They now have a team that looks like it should be, at worst, the 3rd best team in the Western Conference next year, at least in terms of the playoff field, in terms of contenders. Oklahoma City's at number 1. We're going to get to Denver. I think they're right there at number 2. But the Houston Rockets, with the additions they made, I'm really impressed by what Rafael Stone, that front office, did in down Houston. What do you think?
100%. I think I have them right now as the biggest challenger to the Thunder in the West. You mentioned,
which is saying something because you are a Denver
and we're gonna get
fan.
We're gonna get to my Nuggets, I think, next here. But first of all, I don't know what Fred VanVleet did this team an incredible solid. I mean, obviously he gets a little flexibility and maybe an opportunity to make back some of the money he's turning down. And wasn't a great market for free agents this year, but for him to take that deal, I mean, they're well positioned. And beyond that, you mentioned gathering data. They now have until February to gather more data. I think Clint Capella is someone who could be a trade chip for them down the line. Same with Steven Adams. All the young guys that they had that they theoretically are saving for a potential Giannis pursuit, which is still in play. They still have, Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, a bunch of guys who are intriguing, a lot of picks. It's just been a fantastic offseason for them, top to bottom. I agree, huge winner.
Reed Shepherd, by the way, who if you talk to people in Houston, they still believe that he's an excellent player. He only played I think 52 games last year, averaged 4 points. Like, they believe there's a potential star in Reed Sheppard. He was in the G League a lot, but they believe that his year 2, year 3 of Reed Sheppard is going to be a lot better. Fred VanVleet, I get it. He did them a favor in a way, but was there really a market for Fred VanVleet at $25 million per year after the year that he had? Fred VanVleet was never getting the third year of that team option. Maybe there was some consideration of it if everything didn't kind of go their way, but he was very unlikely to get the full $40 million. Now he was guaranteed 50 over 2 to, play as a starting point guard for a contender. So he's getting a lot out of that deal as well. I just think their depth is really, it's really impressive now. And if Reed Sheppard can step in, if Tari Eason can take another step forward, they've got room for organic growth here. Jabari Smith is going to be better. Amen Thompson is going to be better.
Durant's going to make all those guys' lives so much easier too. I mean, VanVleet now is not going to be forced to play bailout offense half the game. I mean, Amen Thompson's life just got way easier. It really is, I think, a home run offseason for them, clearly. But to that point, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets, because I think they were my huge winner. And Chris, I think there were some people, not necessarily in the organization, but I'd say people around the team who were a little bit nervous is maybe too strong, but curious to see how things would work out, because they go for this big shakeup right before the end of the season, right? They fire Calvin Booth, they fire Michael Malone, and it looks like they recognize we need a major overhaul here. And then they kind of go internal for these hires. They promote David Adelman after he did a great job in the playoffs. They promote David Adelman to the head job. They hire from within for the front office. And I think some people may be worried, is this going to be more of the same? And the fact that their first move out of the gate is to trade Michael Porter Jr., someone who Josh Kroenke kind of gave a vote of confidence to when he had that Michael Malone press conference. I thought that was a bold move. I thought that was a smart move. I think some people are looking at it like they gave up that first-round pick to get off MPJ's salary. I think Cam Johnson is an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr. in terms of what he can do as a movement shooter, coming around handoffs. I think his basketball IQ is better. His defense is not great, but it's definitely an improvement over Michael Porter Jr. Combine that with Bruce Brown, the institutional knowledge. He might not have the highs that Russell Westbrook gave them at times last year. He definitely will not have the lows. The Jonas Valanciunas trade is sneakily one of the most consequential moves of the offseason. I mean, their backup center in the playoffs last year was DeAndre Jordan. He was getting minutes against the Clippers in the first round. That's a huge upgrade over there. You add in Tim Hardaway Jr. on the minimum. He's a flawed player, but a knockdown three-point shooter. He is going to get the best looks of his life playing with Nikola Jokic. And what's funny about Denver is every signing they make, those players just get a multiplier because they get to play with Jokic and what he can do for them offensively. So considering where they started, the salary position they were in, they had one tradable first, bumping up against the second apron. To get themselves this level of flexibility, that alone is remarkable. But with how close they were to the Thunder last year, I mean, they played the Thunder last year. Michael Porter Jr.'s shoulder is falling off. Aaron Gordon didn't have a hamstring by Game 7. They're an incredible spot, and I think they still have room. I'm pulling up Bobby Marks here, who's doing yeoman's work, posting every team's salary situation. They still have some of their tax mid-level left. They still have some of the biennial exception left. They have another move to make if they're willing to pay the tax. So, really impressive.
Which they may not be. They
sure.
are not lavish spenders in Denver. Never had been, which is a little weird given how much money the Kroenke family has. But they, I agree with everything you said there. I am not going to slander Michael Porter Jr. I am not here for any Michael Porter Jr. slander. I mean, the guy...
A champion. No,
the guy helped them win a championship. And, for all the talk about his back issues early in his career, dude played 77 games last year. He played 81 games the year before that. He can obviously play opposite Nikola Jokic. I think there are reasons to believe that Cam Johnson could be a better fit. He's not... Look... Michael Porter Jr. is not a good defender. In fact, he's a bad defender. I have not yet seen anything from Cam Johnson to make me believe he's a high-level defender, so maybe he's a little bit better, but I don't know that he's some kind of dramatic improvement on that end. He is a better playmaker. I think he averaged a career high in assists last year in Brooklyn, like 4-something per game, so that adds another ingredient. But we have to see how Cam Johnson fits opposite Jokic and Murray and Gordon. Like, we know Porter Jr. could do it. We're assuming that Cam Johnson could do it. But more importantly, like, the biggest problem with the Nuggets last year was that they didn't have anybody that Michael Malone trusted and, to a lesser degree, David Adelman trusted. Like, they were a 5-man unit with a bunch of other guys that occasionally got tossed into the mix. Like Russell Westbrook when he was playing well, Peyton Watson when he was playing well. They didn't have, veterans that you can count on. Now they do. I mean, Bruce Brown took his $40 million that he got in that new deal for winning a championship with Denver, disappeared into the basketball wilderness over the last couple of years, playing on 3 teams, getting moved around, renting apartments in Indiana, Toronto, and New Orleans. Now he goes back, making minimum level money, but he's going to a team that he understands. A coaching staff that, with David Adelman, who was there under Michael Malone, knows how to utilize him. A star in Jokic that's comfortable playing off of. Like a locker room that he obviously fits into. I think that's a great, great pickup for the Denver Nuggets. And a guy that will immediately play some of the minutes that went to some of the young guys when Christian Brown was out of the lineup. Tim Hardaway Jr., on a minimum contract. Phenomenal signing for Denver. I saw the Synergy Sports stats. Tim Hardaway Jr. made 63% of his open spot-up three-pointer attempts last season. You think he's going to get a few of those in Denver?
He's going from a team with awful spacing to, if he's playing alongside Cam Johnson and Jamal Murray, now all of a sudden the court is just way more wide open for him than it's ever been.
Well, this is the thing. This is like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, when he went to Orlando, was not the same shooter.
Right.
Because he didn't have the same kind of room. Like, you play with Jokic, Murray, and Porter Jr., all of a sudden, like, you're getting wide open looks from the corner. Like, Tim Hardaway Jr., I think is going to have a banner year playing for Denver and sliding right into that role. Like, Valanciunas, good fit, kind of Jokic light in a way. Like, he'll give you a little bit offensively, doesn't really do anything defensively, can't switch on anybody, but, like, really neither could Jokic. So you just it kind of is what it is there. But he gives you a big, physical, durable body that can play minutes and give Jokic a break. Like, Jokic played a lot of minutes last season, had a lot of stress on him offensively and defensively. Maybe Valanciunas can take some of that stress away. I love everything Denver has done. And look, maybe cross your fingers, one of these young guys that has not lived up to expectations. Right. Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther.
I do wonder if Watson and Strawther, they each had like a moment in that Thunder series where it looked like it was coming together for them. They weren't great for the whole series, but I wonder if you have to hope, if you're a Nuggets fan, that unlocked something for them moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, Denver was my other winner as well. The third winner I've got is the Atlanta Hawks. And what an outstanding few months on the job for Ansi Sala and his front office in Atlanta, who has, they have just won, it feels like, every trade and every transaction that they've been involved in. They trade for Kristaps Porzingis. They benefit greatly from Boston waving the white flag and saying next season is over with. They signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker, benefiting from Minnesota not having enough money and cap flexibility to go and sign him. They get Luke Kennard, elite three-point shooter, should play really well opposite Trae Young. And they do that draft day deal with New Orleans where, all right, they don't have the opportunity to draft Derek Queen, who I'm not big on. I said this on the last show, I'm not a huge Derek Queen guy. And in exchange, they get a pick, which could be a top 5 pick in next summer's NBA draft. So a phenomenal run for this Atlanta front office. And look, this really is, a one-year experiment where it's like, let's see what Trae Young can do with real talent around him. Like, we're going to load up. We got Porzingis on an expiring contract. Alexander Walker, good deal. We could always trade him if it doesn't go well this year. Luke Kennard on a one-year deal as well. This is really, I look at it as sending a message to Trae Young that, we haven't put the right talent around you up until this point. Some of it's worked, some of it hasn't worked. Some of the pieces we've acquired have been a mixed bag. This is a group of players that Trae Young should thrive with. Like, I love the fit of Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis. I love the fit of Kristaps Porzingis and Trae Young. I think guys like Alexander Walker bring a defensive identity to that team. He can also make shots. Luke Kennard, he can make shots. Like, I just think they're pushing their chips in on Trae Young and saying, Trae, you got 1 year in a crappy Eastern Conference to show us that you can be the leader of a conference winning team. How do you look at it?
I want to ask you a question at the end of this book, because, like, can they win the East? Like, I think that's very much in play. You think about when they had the run to the conference finals, and, that was a weird season of a variety of factors, but what did they have? They had a great pick and roll partner for Trae Young and Clint Capella, and they had a bunch of just, like, capable wings around him. Jalen Johnson, I thought, was going to win Most Improved last year before he got hurt. He was having a fantastic season.
He's going to be an all-star next year.
Yes.
He's going to be an all-star next year.
He's really, really good. I mean, they have an opportunity to play Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Johnson all together. Like, that, I think, is probably going to be the best defense that they've had around.
As a ball-hawking defense all game long.
It is going to be so good. I mean, watching these last two postseasons, Nickeil Alexander-Walker picking up guys full court, I thought he was going to get more money this offseason. I thought he was going to be a guy that someone's paying $20 million a year, and I think he would have deserved it. That's a great deal for them. Now, Porzingis has not been the same player since you coughed on him, or like whatever it is that happened to him. So I would need to ask you, I am genuinely curious what your expectation is for him this year. I think you had the tweet that was like, contract year Porzingis is going to ball out, which I think I agree with that. So that's the one wild card here. But even with that, they have Onyeka Okongwu coming off the bench, presumably now. I think he's always been a good young piece. They drafted a big Newell, right? He's more of a forward type. So they have a lot of interesting pieces here. And to your point, like expiring deals, they have some movement. I'm more curious, where do you stack them in the East right now? Like, better or worse than the Magic? Because I think I'm also really high on the Magic.
Yeah, the Magic, because the Magic's backbone is their defense, and because I believe even without the addition that they made with Desmond Bane, they would have been better because the injuries killed the Magic last year. Like, they were off to a great start of the season before their guys got hurt. Their front court got hurt. I'd probably slot them behind the Magic. I'd slot them behind the Knicks. I'd slot them behind the Cavaliers for now till we see exactly what the Cavaliers are going to do if there's another move to be made in Cleveland. But I think they're a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. And I think that once you get into the playoffs, they're capable of beating all those teams. It's not like there's a team above them that it's like, well, you can't touch them. You want to avoid them in the first round. Like, they get, Cleveland the first round or the second round, they could beat them. Same thing with New York. Same thing with Orlando. So, fully healthy, I'd probably slot them in at 4 right now in the Eastern Conference. Porzingis is interesting. I do think contract year Porzingis is real. I saw it with my own eyes in Washington. Washington, brief stint down there. What did he average with the Wizards? 22.1 points, shot 37.
Kind of unreal that year.
Yeah, he had a good run. That was his first year there. And then second year, he plays 65 games, averages 23 points, shoots 39% from three, almost 50% from the floor. Goes to Boston, immediately gets a contract extension. It's worth noting that, he was reasonably healthy. 57 games isn't great in that first year in Boston, but I mean, he was pretty healthy during the year and helped the Celtics turn into what they were in the regular season. And his contributions, albeit, they were small, they were vital to the Celtics' success. Game 1 of the finals, he was unbelievable. And he is still, at his best, just a complete mismatch at the elbow, right?
Yeah, he's an ultimate matchup problem for almost every team in the league when he's at his best. I mean, you can't, if you switch a smaller guy, to your point, he'll shoot right over him at the elbow. The pick and pop threes, I don't know how you're going to guard him and Trae Young if Porzingis is really firing with the level of three-point shooting you'll have between them and who else is on the floor. And we haven't mentioned Risa Shea, who I thought the second half of last year, he was like so anonymous the first half that I think a lot of people just stopped watching the Hawks and stopped paying attention to him. And there was all this hype around, Stephon Castle and all these people. He was really good the second half of the year. He's a guy who can take, I think, a leap in his second season.
Yeah, I'm looking at his splits in the second half of the year. Post All-Star, he was about 15 points per game. That's up about 4. Shot 41% from 3 in the second half of the season. Shot almost 50% from the floor. So if that is a sign of things to come, there's no reason to believe it isn't. Like, the biggest leap, or one of the biggest leaps guys take, is between that first and second year when they get all the information that comes with being a rookie, a full season in the weight room, working with coaches to figure out what you need to work on. Look, he's going to take a leap forward. So there's room for organic growth there as well. Like Porzingis, I'm going to assume that a full off season, he's going to get over whatever the hell he was dealing with. I have no idea what was the root cause of whatever, like, I don't even want to speculate on what are some of the things that it could have been, but like whatever the illness was that prevented him from being 100% during Boston's playoff run, it was a huge problem for him, for the Celtics. I'm going to guess a full off season will probably resolve that. And if he's healthy and you can get 65 games out of him and you can get a full playoff run, they're a problem. They're a team that's going to compete for a top 3 spot probably in the Eastern Conference. And, you know, who knows how the chemistry comes together for there. But I love everything that Atlanta's done. All right, give me, do you have another winner, or do you want to go to the loser bracket?
I would love to go to the loser bracket. Although I'll just throw out as a brief winner, very brief here. Damian Lillard, I think, is sneakily a winner. People are being like, the loyalty, blah, 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 the lack of loyalty. Damian Lillard is getting paid. He can do whatever he wants. He's going to get paid on top of what the Bucks are paying him. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, I mean, I don't know if he'd ever admit it, but it's best case scenario for him.
Yes.
Like
yes.
And he talked about this. I did a couple of stories with him in SI about the challenges of not playing in Milwaukee, but living in Milwaukee.
Yes.
Being away from his family and being in an environment that was new and uncomfortable to him. He's going to have a whole year to rehab, whether it's with a team or, you know, on his own with his family in Portland. And then summer of 2026 can just pick whatever team he wants to, go there on the minimum, still get all the money he was owed on the back end of that contract. I mean, I think Miami's going to be in play as it was before for Dame at that point. Yeah, I think it's a win. It's an overall win for Damian Lillard. All right. My first loser on my list, I guess we got to go with the Lakers, or I got to go with the Lakers. I got to go with the Lakers. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I did a whole podcast with Jovan Buha early in the week about like the Lakers and the LeBron stuff, so I don't want to get into that, like try to read between the lines with LeBron. But I know that the Lakers anticipated having a more productive couple of days.
Yeah.
They anticipated coming away from the first 2 days of free agency with, as we record this, just Jake LaRavia, right? Like, no disrespect to Jake LaRavia, who is
but even LaRavia, it's like baffling that he didn't get the non-tax mid-level. It's like they should have started his contract at like $5.1 million. It's Chris, are you familiar with the show Silicon Valley?
I am familiar with it. I don't. Was that TJ? What's his name? Was he in?
Yes, TJ Miller. I believe.
Miller, yeah.
Miller and Gianni. You know, some of us may remember him more than you, but there was a character on the show. His name's escaping me right now, but the bit was like every season he wouldn't do anything, but would get promoted to like an insanely higher position, and sometimes that's like how it feels like Rob Pelinka's tenure is going with the Lakers. And I have respect for Rob Pelinka, but sometimes it just feels like he does nothing and the team somehow like falls backwards into success in spite of him. And I don't want to reduce it to that, but like LeBron James was going to the Lakers in 2018, no matter who was in the front office at that point. So, you know, it was Magic Johnson at the time. Anthony Davis, you know, Rich Paul famously said in the pages of Sports Illustrated, the Lakers are like Jennifer Lopez. Okay. Why wouldn't you want to go there? So, you know, how much did Rob have to do with that? I don't know. I know he had a lot to do with the Russell Westbrook trade. I know he had a lot to do with kind of breaking up the 2020 and 2021 teams that were quite good. I know he had a lot to do with letting go of Frank Vogel, who I think you and I both hold in a really high regard as a great coach. How much did he have to do with this Luka Doncic trade? I mean, kudos to him, I guess, for keeping it quiet as long as he did. But that was a Nico Harrison special approach.
Well, no, I think you got to give Rob credit for the Luka trade because he was able to convince Nico Harrison that A, this needed to be kept a secret.
Yes.
And B, because he didn't have any guarantees that Luka was going to re-sign with the Los Angeles Lakers, that he could only give up one first-round pick. So I think we've got to give him credit for that.
Some credit there, but at times it feels like the Lakers are succeeding in spite of what their front office is doing. And like, I think it was Anthony Irwin who hosts the Lakers podcast. I don't know if I can call this a pure report or what he would term it, but he floated out some rumors that maybe the team was trying to tank Dorian Finney-Smith's value, and it got back to him.
I've heard that. I mean, I've heard that from a couple of people. Yeah. I don't know how. I don't know how they do that. The Rockets jumped on Dorian Finney-Smith the first moment they could. The Rockets, once they did that Kevin Durant deal, they were looking right at Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith loved living in Texas when he played for the Dallas Mavericks. I think his family, I don't want to go too far, but I think his family's still there or stayed down there. So going to Houston was always going to be appealing to Dorian Finney-Smith. Again, I think the Rockets, what I've heard is that they got creative a little bit with that contract. It might not be fully guaranteed on the $53 million that he got, but I mean, there was never, I never got any whiff from talking to other executives that got to watch out for Dorian Finney-Smith, some red flags on this. So if the Lakers did try to do that, it didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work with Dorian Finney-Smith.
Whatever the case may be, that is the exact kind of player you want with Luka Doncic and LeBron James.
He played with Luka Doncic. Yeah. He had a tremendous success with Luka Doncic. I think he's the longest, the guy that played the most games with Luka Doncic.
And just letting him walk out the door, it makes no sense. And now, the center market is drying up. Brook Lopez is gone. Miles Turner is gone. Clint Capella, who would have been an option for them, is gone. Are they putting their eggs in the DeAndre Ayton basket?
Oh, let me talk about this, because losing Brook Lopez to the Clippers is unbelievable. How do you prioritize Jake LaRavia over Brook Lopez? I'm not disrespecting Jake LaRavia, who I think has the potential to turn into a Dorian Finney-Smith type player. They're kind of similar, 6'8" wings who could shoot the three, defend a few positions. But Jake LaRavia is vastly less proven than what Dorian Finney-Smith is. How is he top of your free agency to-do list? Instead of one of the top centers that are out there, like a Brook Lopez, like a Clint Capella, who would make some sense playing opposite Luka Doncic. How is Jake LaRavia at the top of that list? And now, presumably, because this is what's getting reported out there by a lot of people, that DeAndre Ayton is the focus of the Lakers. Of all the centers that are out there, I can't think of a worse fit than DeAndre Ayton, because DeAndre Ayton is a low post center, right? Puts up great numbers, but is a guy that wants the ball in the post. Catches lobs, you wouldn't call him necessarily a lob threat, is not a good defensive player and is not shown to be in recent years. Phoenix ran away from him. Portland just outright dumped him with, $35 million left on his deal in 1 year. I don't know, man. I said to Jovan Buha last show, I don't want to put him in this box, but there are some Christian Wood vibes with DeAndre Ayton, right? Where it's you got a guy putting up numbers that are kind of empty. They're just kind of empty calories. Now, DeAndre deserves more credit because he was the starting center on a finals team. You cannot take that away from him. They went to the finals with DeAndre Ayton averaging whatever it was, 16 and 10, of that year, 14 and 10, whatever the numbers were. But I don't look at DeAndre Ayton as being a round peg, round hole type of fit with the Lakers. I don't know about you.
No, absolutely not. And to your point, he was really good when he was playing with Chris Paul, who is obviously Luka is a ball handler in the sense that those guys are not similar players. Chris Paul is the center elevator in a way that Luka can be, but they don't necessarily do it in the same way. And the fact that it ended so poorly with DeAndre Ayton in 2 straight stops now, the Suns spent a number 1 pick on this guy, okay? Or they picked him over Luka Doncic. So that they were incredibly invested in his career. I mean, it ended very poorly in Phoenix. Of course, I remember there was rumors he was kind of not sitting out, but maybe slow playing his injury. I think Monty Williams was fed up with him. I think the players were fed up with him. Have you heard a good word from Phoenix about DeAndre Ayton since he left? And now you have the Blazers who just pay him to go away. And he wasn't exactly, I would say, the centerpiece of a Damian Lillard trade, but at least someone they could kind of sell to his fans is like, hey, we got a former number one pick back in this deal. The idea of him launching one of those elbow jumpers, which again, he's talented, he can make them, with Luka Doncic kind of waving his arms open on the wing. I don't see it happening. I don't know what the moves are for them free agency wise, which lends me to believe they have to be active on the trade market again. We're recording this late Eastern. Nothing's happened yet. They have a bunch of expirings. Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleba. I mean, Dalton Connect is someone who maybe has, a little bit of value around the league, is kind of a flyer on a young guy. But the fact that, ESPN's Dave McMenamin reported they're trying to preserve cap space for 2027. What? Like, Luka Doncic might not even be on the team then. I don't think he's going to turn down the extension, but if this is the roster in August, why wouldn't he wait a year? It's baffling. It's like they could have a lot of cap space next year if that's really what they're interested in. I don't get it at all. And they have huge holes. They don't have a center right now. They don't really have a wing defender who's gonna guard the Kevin Durant's of the Western Conference. Like, who's guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on this team? Austin Reeves, like Jared Vanderbilt. Well, Jared Vanderbilt's currently like their starting center. So the reason I feel ridiculous about it, Chris, is I say all this, and like 1 hour from now, we're going to find out they traded like Rui Hachimura for Giannis, because that's just how it seemed to work for Rob Pelinka the last 2 years. So, but they are, it makes no sense to me what their plan is right now.
Well, Austin Reeves is the biggest trade chip that they have, because Austin Reeves continues to improve. I think if healthy, can compete for an all-star spot next year, but does have some redundancy with Luka Doncic. Like, if you have Luka Doncic, you don't necessarily need Austin Reeves and all that he can do. You mentioned the expiring contracts. They've still got some draft capital they can play with. Like, the guy that I've been looking at, and I keep, texting the few people that I text and refresh Twitter when it's possible to see what's going on. Nick Claxton in Brooklyn. Like, Nick Claxton's got 3 years left in his contract. I don't know what the Nets are doing besides drafting everybody. Like, they use 5 first-round draft picks. I don't know if any of those guys can play. We'll find out, I guess. Do the Nets really need Nick Claxton at a $25 million per year salary for the next 3 years? Like, do they really need him on that team? And if they don't, can they extract some expiring deals and draft capital from the Lakers? Like, Nick Claxton, I think, makes some sense in Los Angeles. Like, he's a very good defensive player. He can be kind of a rim runner, not great size necessarily, kind of not the size of Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford or some of the guys Lucas play with, but he's a pretty good player. Like, he's a good player. So, like, that's the name that I'm watching the closest over the next couple of days to see if the Lakers can cobble that together. Because I don't think the answer is coming on the free agent market. Like, if they sign DeAndre Ayton, okay. I mean, we all kind of know how that's going to end. It's going to end probably with LeBron and Luka frustrated about the spots that DeAndre Ayton's in, some of the shots that he takes.
The idea of LeBron dealing with DeAndre Ayton, I cannot imagine it.
I mean, his statistics are remarkable, right? Like, going back to his rookie year, he's averaged double-digit rebounds every year of his professional career.
Yeah.
And he's never averaged fewer than 14 points per game, which he did in his third year and last season with Portland. So he's a productive guy. Field goal percentage, well above 50% each year, above 60 in 2 of those years. So the numbers say he's a good player. I just don't think he's a good fit with the Lakers. I think Claxton is someone they should aggressively go after. Maybe you can get him. Maybe if you deal Dalton Connect and, Gabe Vincent's expiring contract and some draft capital there, like, you can make something like that happen. But that's the name I'd be watching close, because the free agent market is now, it's dried up. I think Al Horford's going to wind up in Golden State. That's my prediction. I think the Warriors, once they let Kevin Looney go, they needed somebody, and Al Horford makes a ton of sense. Like, Al, 3-point shooting big, veteran, won a championship, still got something left in the tank based on what we've seen in the last couple of years. There's nobody left for the Lakers to go and sign. They prioritized Jake LaRavia, and here's where we are because of that. Next on my list of losers, I got to go with Indiana. I mean, I gotta go with Indiana. Brutal. Like, like they were already going to take a pretty big step back next year. Like they weren't going to be a finals contender without Tyrese Halliburton next year. But there were people I talked to in the league that were like, they're not going to be that bad. Like Halliburton's a great player, but he wasn't an all-star this past year. They still were a top 5 team in the East. They've got some guys that took steps forward in the playoffs. Like you could count on, Nembhard and Nesmith and maybe Ben Shepherd can play some more minutes. Like they could still be a top 6 team maybe in the East. Maybe if everything breaks right. And then they go out and lose Miles Turner in a market where it seemed almost impossible that they could lose Miles Turner. Like there was, in the span of a couple of days, it became pretty clear that the teams with any kind of cap flexibility, like Brooklyn and Detroit, like they were not going to make a run at Miles Turner. Atlanta, with that trade exception, was not going to make a run at Miles Turner. Suddenly, like the Pacers, I'm mixing metaphors here, but snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And you got Miles Turner signing outright with Milwaukee and the Pacers getting nothing back in return. And all because, according to some of the reporting that's out there, is they didn't want to spend any money. Like they didn't want to be a tax-paying team or deep into the tax or over one of the aprons. I don't know. They didn't want to pay money. And that's been a problem with Indiana for years now. They've been, like Denver, they've been one of those teams that's not looking to pay the luxury tax. So maybe Herb Simon decided, like, with Tyrese Halliburton gone, we're not going to, go crazy with the spending. I can understand that to some degree, but Halliburton's a young guy. He's going to be back in 2 years. Don't you want Miles Turner, age 30, 31, around? Like, here's the other thing. I've seen a lot of Miles Turner slander the last 24 hours. Like a lot of, we had a little bit of at the top of the show, like that, he was inconsistent in the end of the playoffs and,
he's clearly still a very, very good player.
He's still a good player. He still shot 40% from 3 this year. He's still like a guy that can rack up double-doubles. It's funny. Somebody might have tweeted this, or somebody has said it. I don't know where I remember it from as well. I've consumed a lot of content in the last 24 hours. But the Pacers have spent like the better part of the last 6 years trying to trade Miles Turner.
Yeah.
And now they lose him for nothing when it comes down to it, which is crazy. Well, I think they're a big loser in all this. Not only is Halliburton gone, but Miles Turner, they let go for nothing.
And like you said, it took like a truly shocking series of events for them to lose Miles Turner too, because I think they were probably thinking we might be able to get him back on somewhat of a discount. There's no market for this guy. Then Milwaukee comes out of nowhere with this wave and stretch and then completely undercuts them. Do you think the Pacers are a sneaky destination for our guy DeAndre? Because
they wanted him before, right?
They do, like, and they have the full non-tax mid-level. They can pay him that, and I think try to stay under the tax with a bunch of minimums. I wonder if there's like a mutual understanding. Let's say it's like a 1+1, something like that, team option on the second year. And it's like, DeAndre, you can come here for 1 year, do whatever you want, get all the stats you want. And then we either trade you or something, because I think it's kind of the best case scenario for both of those parties. Whereas if I'm Ayton, the last thing I want to do is go to Los Angeles. And now I'm in the LeBron Luka pressure cooker. And every time I fumble a catch, those two guys are yelling at me on the bench. I wonder if that's a sneaky way to maybe save this and ease the pain a little bit. And who knows, maybe somehow I would be surprised, but maybe Rick Carlisle is the kind of guy who can get it out of DeAndre.
The Ayton whisperer. Look, for people that don't remember, back in, 2022, the Pacers tried to sign DeAndre. They did sign DeAndre. They signed the offer sheet, and the Suns, I think it's fair to say, reluctantly matched that offer sheet, and then immediately, a year later, traded him or whatever it was. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. It would make some sense. DeAndre Ayton would be a good stopgap for them. And if you're Ayton, not only is it you have to give some thought to joining the LeBron Luka universe, but you're a young guy. Like, you're going to be looking to get paid at some point again. Mm-hmm. And the chances of you putting up the kind of numbers and having the kind of productivity with the Lakers are not great. Like, you can still be a valuable member of a contending team, but those numbers are going to go down. Your run of, averaging a double-double is probably going to end with the Lakers next year. With the Pacers, you'll dump it into him in the low post and, run an offense through him with Halliburton out, have 4 shooters around him. Yeah, I can see that. That's a good one. I like that potential fit if Indiana wants to spend a little bit more money than the Lakers have. And Ayton, something tells me Ayton is going to be looking out for Ayton, as he should in this situation.
Yeah. You mentioned them, and I want to throw out I wouldn't go so far as to say loser, but loser watch, I'd say, is the Golden State Warriors. Now, you mentioned that I think Horford would be a really good signing for them, so that's why I'm kind of reserving, my full judgment here, and I think that would be a good pickup. But, I think they certainly had a belief last year that when fully healthy, Steph didn't get hurt. I'm sure they felt like they had a great chance to win that Timberwolves series. And after they acquired Jimmy Butler, things really took off there. They were really, really good. They obviously beat the Rockets. But I think the issue they have is the team they have right now, I think would have been great last year. Could have been really good last year. The way the Rockets have upgraded, the way the Nuggets have upgraded, I do think the Warriors are falling behind the arms race a little bit. Now, look, they don't have great flexibility, but, they're another team that looked like, are we in on a center? I think Horford would be a good pickup for them. My fear is, I think there were moments in the postseason this year where it was the first time I felt like Al Horford showed his age. And I say that with full credit to Al Horford, who I think has been, one of the most underrated pickups and players of this decade, of the 2020s. He's been so good. I think there were moments in the playoffs, in that Knicks series, where you maybe started to see some aging from Al Horford. And it's, how much can you count on him at this point? I think they still need some help. And I only say that because I think Steph is still that guy. I think I still believe in his capabilities. I think they have a great duo in Steph and Jimmy, and we saw how well they played together in such limited time. But I'm worried they're falling behind a little bit.
I thought, to Al Horford, I thought he was overextended in the second half of last season and in the playoffs. I think the injuries that the Celtics had, specifically to Porzingis, forced them to play Al maybe more than he should have, and that cost them. Like, at some point, the legs are going to go if you're that age. I still think in the right situation and the right role, he can be incredibly productive. And I think going to a team like Golden State that knows exactly how to manage older players would be perfect for him. He would only have to play 20-ish minutes per game, sit out the back-to-backs, not play the 3 games in 4 nights. Golden State will not go into next season concerned at all about hunting down Houston or Oklahoma City or whoever for a top 2 seed in the conference. I think that would be an ideal fit. And of course, you have to look at the numbers. And by the way, just Horford replacing Looney would be a big upgrade because Looney didn't do anything for that team in the second half.
Yeah.
He was not, his minutes in production went down the second half of the season. He was basically a non-factor in the playoffs. So you're getting something that's better than what you had. At least it looks like on paper. And look, the numbers with Steph and Jimmy were outstanding. They were outstanding. They probably win that second round series if Steph Curry's healthy. I think. I don't think the Timberwolves were particularly strong. I think that played out in the conference finals. So I think you've got to have some confidence that there's still one more good year of Jimmy Butler. There's definitely more than one good year of Steph Curry. And you still got the Kuminga stuff to figure out. That's the next shoe to drop.
What is your current expectation with Kuminga? Because it's almost got to be a sign and trade now. Unless, is there any chance you give him on coming back to the Warriors?
I think there's a chance, but I would put sign and trade as the most likely outcome for him. I don't know where yet. I think he works for a lot of teams. He works for young teams trying to rebuild. That's why the Nets were often mentioned as a team that could potentially go for him. And he does work for the right contender. When he doesn't work in Golden State when Butler is out there and Steph is out there and Draymond is out there. But when Steph was out, you had Kuminga stepping in and playing pretty well at times for that team. So it just seems, I would call it unlikely. Unlikely is probably too strong. I just can't see him back in Golden State, given everything that kind of happened last year, where there was obviously some friction going on within that team.
Coming out and just saying, I kind of dumping on Steve Kerr was a little shocking to me.
Kind of. There was just a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff that's does it really make sense to to bring him back. I just don't know right now where the sign and trade is. I'm sure there's one out there that makes sense.
People that Chicago, like, is Vucevic a needle mover for them? A Vooch Horford front court, especially when
that doesn't stop anybody. There's no that's defensively. I mean, I guess if you're getting him just for
that's kind of like one of them starts, one of them is a backup. Neither has to play in the fourth quarter if you have Draymond. It's interesting, like, but to your point, like, who wants to take a chance on him? Teams are drying up. Like, maybe Toronto, you heard they might be looking to move like a Quickly or RJ Barrett. Do they maybe, roll the dice on someone like Kuminga? As we saw today, there's reasons I think to be a little bit more patient than we wanted. You expect all these deals to come out right at the start here, but it does feel like teams are maybe getting a little bit more set, and I'm curious how Golden State adjusts this, because to me, they got to be behaving like Denver. Like, we were closer than maybe we expected to be. Let's figure out a way to tweak on the margin.
And I think they will. That's why I think that Kuminga sign and trade is the most likely outcome. And that's why I'd give the Warriors an incomplete as we record this on Tuesday evening. I think there's more to come with them when it comes to like a Horford signing and a Kuminga sign and trade, and maybe something else that they can nibble around the fringes. Like, they made it, like when they did the Butler deal, they made it pretty clear that they were still going to go all in on this core. And I don't think that's going to stop this offseason. I don't know about other losers. Like, Boston to me is an obvious loser. I've been trying to tell people for weeks now that, like, I kept hearing this stuff like, Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla are not going to be, they're not going to be happy just, tanking for next year. And like, okay, but yeah, they are. Like, there's no other choice with this team. Like, this is kind of what they are. This is who they are, Rohan. Like, there was no stopping what's going to happen to this team next year. And I think they're doing the right thing by not tying themselves to, a $40 million contract for Luke Cornett, or any kind of multi-year deal on Al Horford, or any of the guys that they've got. I understand right now their starting center, is like Neemias Queta, which
maybe Xavier Tillman,
maybe Xavier Tillman, and like George Niang, I guess, is your starting power forward at the moment. Like, but the thing to remember about the Celtics is that they control their own draft pick next year. So if they can get a lottery pick, that is something that is both valuable to potentially use as cheap capital, as a cheap player, or to trade, to go get another guy that can play opposite Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. What I'm happy about is that they didn't trade Jaylen Brown. Like, I know there were a lot of people wondering if they were going to do that. I had heard nothing remotely close to anything that resembles a Jaylen Brown trade. I know teams are interested. I don't think the Celtics were all interested in that particular deal. So you've got Tatum coming back in 2027, or 26-27. You've got Jaylen Brown still under contract for multiple years. Still got Derek White, who knows? Something could happen with him down the line. I think the Celtics are doing exactly what they should do given the circumstances. What do you think?
Look, it pains me to say this because I've been fighting back on the propaganda of you and your Boston cohorts for years now, but I think the Celtics have had an incredibly smart offseason in like a series of incredibly smart offseasons. Ever since Brad Stevens has gone to the front office, he has basically pushed the right button every time. I mean, the Derek White trade is one of the best NBA trades of the century. In a time where people are like, is this guy really worth, maybe the second first that we're throwing in there? Home run move. They bought low on Porzingis and, traded him at the right time. They bought low, frankly, on Drew Holiday and traded him at the right time. Like, I think they've made a lot of smart moves. They're going to have a ton of flexibility next summer with some of these deals coming off and getting Simons an expiring deal. Like, they have so many options with Anthony Simons alone. You can trade him this year.
Oh, God. Anthony Simons. How many threes is Anthony Simons going to toss up?
He's going to be living his best life. So I think they've had an incredibly smart offseason. And, they're in a position with, they have good ownership, even though it's changing. They have a good front office. Everyone there is very secure in what they're doing. And the fan base, I think, frankly, is educated enough to recognize we're not going to have Tatum for a year. It doesn't make sense to kind of go in. I will say, I wonder, because we'd heard for weeks. I mean, I think it was a kind of an open secret around the league that this team wasn't eager to dive deep into the second apron another year in a row this summer, regardless of what happened. This was even before the Tatum injury. One thing that's a little surprising to me, Chris, is let's say they had brought back a lot of the band, but they've been one of the favorites in the East with the Pacers kind of out. It's tricky. I mean, I think Jaylen Brown's a really good player. So that to me, I would have been interested to see just how good they could have done in kind of this version of the East. But to me, looking at them as a loser, given the hand that they were dealt, I think they made all the right moves.
Yeah. They could have competed, I think, for a top 5 spot if they brought everybody back next year. Maybe if things break right, it could have been a top 3 team, but I would have given them no chance to win the Eastern Conference. And the upside of getting under that second apron and perhaps even under the luxury tax, I don't think they're done yet. I mean, you've still got Simons who could appeal to somebody on an expiring contract.
I've heard rumors that the Hauser market is robust.
Yes, the Hauser. Well, yeah. I love how that's somehow a hot take. The guy is a 40% 3-point shooter making $10 million per year for the next 4 years. If Luke Cornett's worth $40 million, Sam Hauser's under a good contract to go out there and acquire him. So I think there's still the potential that they get even lower, which will create options for them in the next couple of years. You can trade draft picks that maybe you couldn't have traded down the line. And you're going to go into the 26-27 season with 2 guys that can be the centerpiece of a championship team. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have proven that they can be number 1 and number 2 on a championship winning team. Then it's on Brad Stevens, who has proven to be really good at this general managing thing to put the right pieces ultimately around them. I don't know, other losers out there. I look at the Knicks still, and it's is Jordan Mike Brown, is Jordan Clarkson signing and Mike Brown coaching? Is that is that going to be the thing? Is Mike Brown really going to be the head coach of that team? I can tell you from my own reporting, it has been a chaotic few weeks in the New York front office. As they've sifted through these coaching candidates. I don't know how serious Don Staley was as a coach. I can't fathom, not that Don Staley shouldn't be the coach that gets the chance to be the first, women's head coach in the NBA, but that's the wrong job.
Yes,
that's the wrong job.
That is not.
The team that was on the cusp of an NBA Finals just fired a coach that was pretty damn good. You got to put Don Staley in that kind of pressure cooker. I didn't see that. And now you've kind of settled on Mike Brown, who I think is a good coach, former coach of the year. But is that an upgrade over Tom Thibodeau? Mike Brown, another defensive-minded guy.
It feels like they're reshuffling the deck. I mean, again,
they didn't know what they were doing. Let's just be clear about that. They didn't know what they were doing when they fired Tom Thibodeau. They had no plan whatsoever in place, other than to cross their fingers and hope that one of these teams that had a current coach that they liked, specifically Dallas, was going to let that coach go. That was it. Anyway, Rohan, welcome to League Partnership with NBC News. You are now part of the apparatus. You are now part of the machine. You are now required to make regular appearances on NBA TV and do all sorts of league-mandated duties. So welcome back to the show.
I'm looking forward to it, Chris. Thank you for having me on.